Hi. Okay, this is Chris again. I'm back. All right, let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining. This webinar is going to be on the SharePoint Essentials Toolkit by QiPoint. And my name is Chris, and I'll be providing you with this webinar. Okay. A little bit about myself. I'm a SharePoint architect. Started pretty early on with SharePoint. And recently I've been dabbling with some Python code and artificial intelligence. It's kind of a hot thing now, so looking into that, and I enjoy technology, so I've always kind of been dabbling with it. This is the agenda for today, and just so you know, the webinar will be recorded, so we'll be providing that after the session is complete, obviously, over an email, and then you can forward that to anyone if you have colleagues that couldn't make it or that you want to share it with. Okay. So what we'll be covering today is a bit about the company, QiPoint. We're fairly new, so we'll go over a slide on a little bit of background about us. What is SharePoint Essentials Toolkit? What is it used for? There'll be a product overview, like some of the features and components and what you would use it for. There'll be some use cases, scenarios. And then, of course, there'll be a live demo of the product, and I'll try to spend more of the time on the live demo to show you what it can do and what you would use the product for. Okay, and then you can see if it's going to be something that you guys can make use of. Then I'll go over some of the licensing and information, and if you have any questions, you can post it into the chat. In the webinar window, there should be a section for questions, and then you can post it there, and then I'll get to it at the end. Okay, so about QiPoint, we were founded in 2012 in Jersey City, New Jersey, registered with the state of New Jersey, and that same year we started development of one of the components, Broken Link Manager. Back then it was just a console application. It was a very simple product called Broken Link Manager that checked for links, and it was a free component actually back then. It was very basic. It just did checks for broken links in your web pages and so forth. It didn't look inside of documents or things like that it does now, and it didn't have a find and replace mechanism. In 2013 we started development of other components and put them all into the SharePoint Essentials Toolkit. So for example, site auditing, site and list inventory components, and permissions manager. In 2014 we added more to the suite, and last year we added the content manager that gives you item query and a copying list functionality, and I'll show you that in a moment in the live demo. In 2015, the product did quite well, continued to grow, and to this day, this is our flagship product, and we're putting our resources into making sure this is, a superior product, and that you can make use of it. In 2016, we had 4.5 out of 5-star review from SharePointReviews.com from one of their Microsoft MVPs. We contacted them to do the review, and but it was an independent review on their, from one of their MVPs. We also have some SharePoint MVPs who have reviewed the product, such as Vlad. He was actually in one of our webinars too, and he's founder of Absolute SharePoint. And some of you might have been in our webinar too, because we had Andrew Connell and Joel Olson, Vlad, and Liam Cleary with us going over cleaning up SharePoint and SharePoint Essentials Toolkit. So part of this webinar, because it was so close to that demo webinar, I'll be going over some of the cleanup items also that you can do with the toolkit. Okay. So what is SharePoint Essentials Toolkit? It's a Windows application, so it can be installed on Windows 7 or higher. There's no server agent, so it doesn't have to be installed on your SharePoint servers. It works with SharePoint on-premise as well as Office 365, SharePoint Online. It's been designed for site owners and site collection administrators, and you know, kind of like SharePoint power users. However, a lot of farm admins do use the tool. So it's kind of like the like a SharePoint designer, the way it gets installed, or Microsoft Word, because it's a client application. There's lots of admin reports and different ways you can customize them, and I'll be showing you that. There's automated reporting built in, so you can do scheduled reports and also automatically export to SharePoint. And that was just, you know, scheduling exports to SharePoint. All the reports, so permissions, broken links, inventory, site activity, or auditing, you can have these all scheduled so that they'll, you know, you kind of set it up once and just leave it to do weekly jobs, for example, to export to SharePoint. And you have the option also to either export to SharePoint as Excel reports or as SharePoint list items. Okay. So platform support is SharePoint 2010 and higher. It's using CSOM web services, so the product doesn't support SharePoint 2007 or older. Just starting from SharePoint 2010. Again, there's no server install, there's no database install. It uses XML and different file types for the reports and so forth, and logs. It's a fairly simple setup. You can probably set it up in 5 minutes, and I'll show you how to do that. You can share reports, as I mentioned, export to SharePoint. It's all built in, and you can automate this by scheduling them. And you know, there's different formats it supports where you can view reports and graphical reports. Okay, some of the components and features: permissions, broken links, site and inventory reports. I'll show you these in detail again in the live demo. Item and file reports. So, you know, starting from the top, permission reports, you can do, you know, checking user permissions, checking AD group permissions, where are, you know, all domain users group granted access, and build a report across. So you can have like one single report across, you know, multiple site collections and multiple farms even. You know, reports can get large if you make it too wide, but it does give you the ability to parse and check for permissions across sites, which is difficult in SharePoint out of the box. The tool has the, you know, the broken link manager to find and fix broken links if you're doing a migration, or just if that's an issue and you want to find any broken links. It's got that component built in. There's site and list inventory reports, which I'll show you. It's probably easier to show you to explain what those are. But basically, it will give you a list of all of your sites and lists. You can build a site map as well. And from these reports, you can also modify. So permissions you can modify after you have the report, such as changing or removing user permissions. The broken links is a report, but you can also fix them, like auto-replace, for example, if the domain name changes. Site and list inventory reports, you can have an inventory of all your lists and view the versioning history, or sorry, the versioning settings, so like major and minor versions, and bulk edit to change them if you need to. Item and file reports, such as finding web parts in pages or finding JavaScript that you need to remove and put into an external JavaScript file. If you need to find certain items with specific metadata across multiple, you know, you may have lists and libraries across multiple sites and site collections that you need to report on. Large file reports for, you know, files that are greater than 50 megs or something, or larger than 1 gig across all your sites. You can build one report like that. And there's copying lists and libraries. I'll show you an example of that, like copying a site page that has web parts. And then there's, I just added this one, built-in cleanup tools. So, you know, but I just added it, but there's a significant amount of cleanup you can do using this toolkit. Okay, and I'll show you some of them. So use cases, I've already gone over some of them, but you know, you can do all these types of reports. You know, pre or post migration reports. So these, again, you know, are kind of a little repetitive, but these are all the use cases that I've already gone through for cleanups. And again, I'll show you it in the live demo. So what can I clean up? If you were in our previous webinar, I went over this briefly. Basically, there's a portion where you can search for certain files. So let's say large files. You can find them and then report on them and even recycle them if needed. If you did a report on web pages, you could do a report on web pages that have errors or specific JavaScript. Okay, I'll show you this one in a moment. There's site and list cleanup. So again, you can find lists that perhaps have 0 items that have been created but never used. There's an option to append labels to titles and descriptions as well, so that you can flag them for deletion, for example, or for to be hidden. And then there's a permissions cleanup, where you can remove permissions and change permissions and even just report on permissions if that's what you need. Okay, so some examples of the site inventory, site and list auditing, is getting the total size, recycle bin size, other settings, and versioning. Again, it's easy to validate because you can right-click on the reports, you can group and filter to personalize, and you can save views, which are similar to SharePoint views. You can save the views after you group, filter, and sort. So for example, finding all the document libraries with versioning not turned on, you could create a view for that, for example, and save that, and always have that to review per site or for groups of sites. Okay, and then again, it's very easy to just click export or to have it sent to SharePoint. Here's an example of a report for list versioning. So again, this is across multiple sites and site collections. You can drag and drop. So here I just drag and drop inherited permissions, for example, to see which lists have inherited permissions, like they're unique, where inherited permissions is turned off or false. And then when exported to SharePoint, this is how it would look, and you can always group it. But a spot where a site owner or someone would be able to see the stats of all their lists and libraries and all the subsites, for example. Okay. And again, there's versioning data if you need that. There's lots of information on it, like who last modified it, how many items. Okay, if check-in, check-out is enabled, if it's available in search. Permission manager, you can do lots of different types of permission reports. There's lots of the types of reports you can do actually for it by grouping and filtering as well. So, and across sites. Okay, let me try to get to the actual live demo quickly. But here's a screenshot of that report, like a permissions report for Mark Powers, for example. And you can optionally show if it's nested within AD groups. So I can see here, Demo NYC members has an AD group called Marketing Department, and then within Marketing Department, there's also Marketing Managers. So you can see where this user has been granted access. And again, you can group. That's, because it's a lot of information to look at when it's a flat list like this. So grouping it really helps to see what, to see the information. So for example, grouping by the column scope, whether it's, at the site level access that he has or list level access, and these are all the different names of the lists. And then there could be also item or folder level access. So if we grouped by that, you can see it, then it's all collapsed, and those are all the different types of artifacts that user has access to. Okay. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me after as well if you want to call, a quick call or one-on-one demo, or if you want to post the question into the chat in this webinar, and I'll get to it at the end also. And then from here, you can also group by permission level. So I can see here for the list, there's user has access at, contribute rights, to this documents list. Since it's with that documents, the list group, it's a document library called documents that the user has contribute rights to. So you can group and pivot the information however you need to, and and then export it to Excel if you need to, or to SharePoint. Okay, and all of the reports will have a right-click ability, so you can right-click and then open and navigate to where it is directly from here, because that makes it a lot easier to view it and change it if you want to manually. You can also do it from this screen by selecting the item and hitting Edit Permissions, but if you want to just go view it in the page, this user was granted contribute rights to the documents library and granted through, so he had contribute rights through this group, domain users group. So I can see, this is the list with unique permissions, and that's how the user has access. I could see when I navigated to it. Okay. This is just the homepage dashboard of the tool. If you haven't installed it before, these are all the sites that the user would have would be managing. Okay, you can name the groups as you want to. It's just a logical organization of the sites. You can label these how you want. It doesn't affect SharePoint. There's site information here, so broken links, permission information. And then here's an example of a broken link report. And I'm going to go over these reports again after. It's just I wanted to show you in screenshots first. So again, you can use some of the views. So after it's grouped how you want it to, like the other reports, you'll have views. And all of the reports are very similar. So once you kind of learn how to use one of them, you should be able to learn how to use the other reports, because they all have views and you can save the views. And this view is broken links by document, it's been called, which we created for you. So you can group by, these are the different document libraries and lists, and also it's grouped by item, and it's showing you all the broken links in them. Okay, so from here you can see, for example, in this one, the status code. You can see the actual link that was found. If it's a relative link, we also have an algorithm that we use to try to figure out the absolute URL based on where that item is, that link is, and if it's a / or a ... etc. There's also a column called link type for this component, Broken Link Manager. So part of the difficulty we found is, not just finding all the broken links in all the locations. The tool will also search inside of files, so it'll search inside of PDFs, Word documents, Excel, in all the web parts, pretty much all the out-of-the-box web parts. But the other difficulty was actually figuring out where in pages they are. So in a web page, you can have thousands of links. So we've put down, if it's in script editor or content editor web part, or in the wiki page area, it'll say web page contents. So it'll also have something called link type that'll show you. Okay. Here's one of the. This is an older screenshot, but it's give an idea of what. It looks better now, but now this is a screenshot of like a graphical report for broken links. So we have these as well. Some reports in there with, if you need it for meetings or something. Okay, so let's get to the live demo. So I already have it open here. This is on a Windows 7 machine, or sorry, Windows 10 machine. And what we have is that we call it the top navigation, and then we've got the left navigation. The first thing you do when you install it is, when you install the toolkit, it'll be blank. Here, it won't have any sites, so you'll need to click Add Site, and you type in or enter the URL, for example, that you want to add. You'd use default SharePoint authentication for on-premises, Office 365 if you're using SharePoint Online. If you've got Office 365 with multi-factor authentication, or if you have a federated environment or a custom login screen, then you can use you should use web browser authentication. Okay, so from here you'd enter the username and password. There's some other options as well, but I'm just going to go ahead and add that site. It'll add all of the sites under that site collection automatically that you have access to. So I'm going to say no more sites. After you add the site, it'll appear under something called My Group 1. Okay, and this one's actually a SharePoint 2016 environment. And what I'm going to do is I'll label it. So what you can do is, and again, this is just for helping to organize. So this is how you'd really just kind of get it set up. And then you can choose if you want a different icon or something. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll first show you a simple report that you can do I'll start with the broken links, and I'll show you each of the reports. Actually, let me start with copying a site pages library. Okay, so for example, in this page, this one I'm going to fix all the links in it. But before I do that, let's just say I need to copy this over to another site. Okay, and you can see here there's some broken links, but let's just say I'm copying this site and over, and I want to copy this page to another environment. I can copy by right-clicking and then copy, and then let's say I'm going to go to this page. Let's open it in the browser. This one is just blank, but I'm going to copy it here under something called Site Pages. And so let's right-click, paste. And this is just one of the features of the tool, but I just thought I would show you. Sometimes you might need to copy site pages over, and you can use the tool to do it. This page that I showed you, it's got several dependent lists. So let's say I've got HR links. I've got a content editor web part here. I've got JavaScript script web part, and I've got files in this document library. But let's say I'm going to use the documents library and the target instead. So I'm going to copy over everything, including the HR links. Okay. There are also some images that are part of my publishing images folder or publishing images library. So I know I need to copy that over. So I'm going to copy over both HR links and that publishing images, which I believe is site assets library. Okay, so let's say I want to copy also department links. Let's say HR links. I know I need the site assets, and then that page was in the site pages library. So I'm going to copy that over. I want to make sure I copy over the site pages library after the other ones, just because I want to make sure those lists are available for that library. And then I'm going to make sure I can overwrite it if it exists, that library in the target site, this test01. Okay, so then I'll just hit next. It'll show me a preview, and I'll hit start. And then this will run, and I'll let this run. It'll be pretty quick, and then I'll go on to the other components, and I'll show you those. So while that's running, well, it'll be fast actually. I'll just show you this one. So this is what we call the active logs. All of our components will have something called active logs, where you'll be able to see what's happening. Okay, and you can export the logs if you need to. But it completed. I'll hit OK. And I'll go to, again, this was the original one. And this was my test01 in a different site collection. So let me make sure it copied. Yep. And it was the home page. So yep, so it copied it over. I've got those two links that were kind of broken before, which I'll fix too. But I've got my JavaScript intact, HR links, and my public links. Actually, my HR links I think I already had existing, and it added new items, so I should have deleted that before. But you can see it. So that's basically how you would copy over a test page, or sorry, not test page, but copy over like pages. Okay, so you can do that. Let me show you the. Let's see. I'll show you the inventory report. So let's say you've got this site collection, Demo NYC, and you've got all these subsites under it, and you need to get an idea of what are all the sites and lists and libraries in it. I could right-click and click Select All Children. If I wanted to, I could include other sites, for example, or even just a subset of that whole site collection. But let's say I wanted, let's just pick a whole bunch. So let's say I went up to here. I could take all of these sites and say I need to view a merged, what's called a merged report, to view all the lists for all of them. I could have easily just selected one and view reports and looked at the inventory of that one site, and maybe it's got 15 or 20 lists or something, 16. But if I needed to get a bigger picture of multiple sites, I can right-click by holding, selecting them and right-clicking, and then let's say I click List Inventory. And then that'll be an inventory of all the lists and libraries across all of those sites. So you can see site collection, site URL, and quite easily, if I needed to, I could break it up by site URL. So these are all the lists for all these sites with a simple drag and drop, right? I can put it back, and let's say I don't care about, I just want to see all the libraries with versioning turned off. Let's just say, whatever the need might be. So let's say I only want document libraries. So there should be here also, the template would be document library. So for example, and and then I can see here all the libraries where versioning is turned off, for example. I could also see the versioning settings. So if I scroll to the right, you've got there's a lot of information. So you can move things around, hide columns if you want to. So for example, major versions. Oops. Let's see where versioning is turned on. So this one has 90 and 80. So you can see the versioning, the size. There's also size used by versioning data in this report. There's the built-in reports. So we actually have one called list versioning, where it moves the columns over for you, the major and minor versions. If you wanted to, you could, let's say move it by group. So I can see by environment, but these were all part of the 2013 environment, so that didn't really make a difference. Let's just say this was a report for versioning that you wanted to share. I could hit export. And again, you can export all the reports. But this is just one of them. And so what we did is we've also made the report into a table in Excel, and we've kept the grouping so that when you do all your filtering and grouping, you don't lose it when you go to Excel, and then you can share it, filter it, etc. Okay, so we we prepared it like that so that you can use it this way. Okay. Anyhow, so that's exporting to SharePoint, or sorry, exporting to Excel a report for, let's say, list inventory. If I wanted to filter it, and then this might be another report. Let's say I hit Save View. I could call this whatever I want to. Document libraries with no versioning. I'm just using versioning as an example, but this could be, by size or, whatever criteria you want. There's different information here. Last modified dates. You can also add criteria by right-clicking and then filter editor to do more criteria. So you can say where last modified is greater than or equal to, and then put in dates or however you want to do it. Okay, like year to date or something. Okay, let me get to some other reports. There's also the site inventory report. So if I wanted to, let's say, see all the site information, I can right-click again, select all children, view reports, and a merged report of the site inventory. And what I didn't show was that actually on the previous page, you could have bulk edited all the versioning settings and things like that for those lists before that. It's basically very similar. It's going to be a site inventory, and then it'll just show you all the sites across that, whatever you selected, site collection URL, and these are all the different sites. And then it'll have the information, different types of information, like what the different settings, last modified date, etc. Okay. And again, obviously you can group, right? So inherited permissions or something, however you want to organize the data. Okay. One thing I was going to show you also was, let's see, permission reports. So let's say I wanted to check permissions for a user. We've got about 20 minutes left, so we're pretty good for time. So if I want to check user permissions, you could, again, multi-select, and let's say this site, I don't know, whatever the sites. I know that in this site, this test user has folder rights in there somewhere. So if I right-click, create report, and let's say I want to check a user's permissions across these sites, it was Sarah. So let's just say, this was whatever you want to call those 33 sites. So across those sites, I'm going to check this user's permissions, and I can hit run now. And it's going to be similar to doing the check user permissions in SharePoint, but it's going to do it, across the 33 sites and then show you in one report. So that'll run, and then it'll build this report after. I'm going to let that run and go to the next one. Another thing you can do is, I'll get to the broken link after. I'll show you a content manager, an item query. So let's say there's a web part that you wanted. Let's pick on this script editor web part. So if I edit this page, and let's say this script editor web part, you're migrating and you need to know where all of these are because you're going to be moving them to an external JavaScript file or whatever it is, or maybe it's one that's getting decommissioned. So if I wanted to find it, I could go and find some JavaScript that's unique to it, for example, like let's say I'm doing this one. I'm going to copy that and cancel. And I could right-click, create report, item query report, and this feature allows you to find different item level, like items, in a report. Okay, so here are the options. So like based on size, last modified, inside of file content. So it could be inside PDFs or Excel. In this case, it's just I'm looking inside web pages. Okay, my other job completed, but we'll take a look at that one in a minute. I can find based if I'm looking for content types that are in use and I want to remove them or get a report on certain content types. If I need a report on files with no checked in version, like they were dragged and dropped but never checked in because they're missing metadata or something, I could build a report on all of those files and who owns them. I could use regular expression to find something like whatever it is, credit card number or something like that, whatever it is that you need to find using like a special formula. But let's say I just want to find, let's say, web parts and so forth. I could paste that in there and say, if the file content contains this JavaScript, then report on it. Let's say I only want to find it in my site pages library because it's in my site pages. So I just type in the display name there of the library or list. I could export this if I wanted to or schedule it. But let's say I'm going to run it now. So that'll run and find all instances where that script is in site pages. Okay, it was fast because there's barely any pages in that library. So when you hit open report, it'll tell me where those instances are found, and then I could right click and then open the item to go check it and take certain actions. We'll be adding more features here for different types of actions like setting metadata, but right now it's it's more of a reporting thing, but you do have some options here. Okay, and then this could be called locations. I don't know, let's say it was called colorful links. So you could save that, and then your view would be here, and you could reuse that if you want to in another group of sites that you're searching or something, if you wanted that separately. If I go back to the user permissions for Sarah, then it's completed. I can click open report, and from here I can see where the user has been granted access. I can group, let's say, by type and folder level, list level. So for example, direct access here to in this subsite, which I knew existed. So I can right click open permissions page, for example. Open permissions page. Should have opened. Okay. So so there's that one. So it'll find the instances. It's here too because the user has been granted access through also this group, which is this one. The AD group actually has the word test in it, but so this is the AD group that Sarah is granted access through also. Okay, I could also say, show me where she has, a certain level. If it was full control, you'd see full control in here too, but so she has edit rights in a bunch of places. I could see only where it's unique permissions. So here, she has edit rights and this documents library, so I can go open permissions page. And she was granted access through demo NYC members. Right. So there you can have a report that'll help you find out where the user has access. And then I could select that, for example, right click, and let's see how this works, but it seems like there might be something wrong with this in this beta for editing. Our official is released in a week, so this should get sorted out by then. I just wanted to include some of the new features in it, but maybe I shouldn't show it. Anyhow, it would be able to right-click to edit that permission. We do have a video online that Liam Cleary did on this. It's on our website, but if you are interested, you can let me know and I can send you it on how to do it. But you can try it out. The version that's on our website is an official version, not a beta, which won't have this issue. And I apologize, I should have tried this before. Yeah, so Yeah, usually all our betas are very stable, so I got a little overconfident, so I apologize that those ones, yeah, so anyways, you can try that out. Let me move on to the next one. So there's also for broken links. So for example, I showed you this a couple times. If you have broken links, so we've covered, bulk, moving over or copying over site pages or document libraries. You could do list items when you're using the tool to copy things. We went over site and list inventory. I showed you permission reports. And then here's for example, for broken links. This page, let's say, has a bunch of broken links, like pointing to the old environment, old server. These are pointing to old server, which is in an image viewer web part. Here are some links in a content editor web part. Let me hit edit here. And here is from a script editor web part. So if I hit edit web part, edit snippet, so I can see, you might have saw this already before, but it says old server. And here we've got, old server. So a bunch of things pointing to the old environment. And just quickly, I'll open the sample PDF, and let's open up a new page here. And I've got links in Word. So I've got an image with a URL behind it. I've got some UNC file path here, regular HTTP path to old server. Oops. Okay, and a few others. So this was in links in Word. And here is, some other links, file share, and then here's a regular link. Okay. So I'm going to exclude this report. So let's say I want to run a job on this site. I'll right-click, create report, broken link report. There's different options here. You can give a job name. So it's the same as all of our other components. You give a job name if you want. It can be across one or more sites. You can choose what you want to include. It can do attachments. It can do file content. So if you're cleaning up broken links, it's deep. It goes pretty deep. You've got web page libraries, and then different inclusion rules and exclusion rules. You can do differential scanning. You can choose to only scan one file, for example, or a folder. Exclusion rules are just opposite of inclusion rules, so I want to skip that one too. Except we've got URL exclusions, and this will allow you to exclude, navigation links or whatever links that you want. We put in a bunch here, like for namespaces or things that are common. And let's say, I'm going to show you this one actually live. Contoso. So let's say it got moved to Contoso, migrated, and this will work exactly the same for SharePoint Online. If you're migrating to SharePoint Online, for example, you can change the URL to, contoso.sharepoint.com, for example, or whatever it is. Let's say or if you're decommissioning, let's say, a file share, and you want to point it to SharePoint, or let's say a new file share server, you can do that. And there's some other options. I won't go over all of them, but basically you've got a safety mechanism to always require versioning for it to do a replace. So I'll turn that off because this is just a test. And then you've got preserve author and some other settings. So I can show you the scheduler. If I wanted to schedule this for weekly jobs or even monthly, I want to run it for monthly reports on broken links for all the site owners, for example. You've got your email options. What's cool about the reports that you can have, permissions, inventory, all of these you can have and apply a view, like a custom view. So you can say large items, for example, or old web parts or whatever it is, and then apply that custom view that you created before to the Excel file that gets emailed or that gets uploaded to SharePoint. So you can do Excel, which is the default, or if you want to have this sent to SharePoint, you can configure all that stuff here. And again, you can do either list items or Excel, and then we also have a free component called the Essentials Lite Client. So I'm not going to get into that one. It's you can download it from our website. It's a free tool for people to use without a license to open up reports, where it gives you drag and drop ability and export to Excel also. Okay, so you can also do from Excel to SharePoint in SharePoint library. Okay, so those are the options for that. So I'll go back and use this Excel. I'll hit run now. And so this job will go and look through the links and then fix anything that is pointing to the old server to point it to the new server. Okay, so there's that. There's also bulk upload. So let's say I wanted to upload a bunch of files, but I've got, let's say, hundreds of them or 1,000 of them, and there might be special characters or things like that. I want to preserve the last modified information from that file into the metadata in SharePoint. I could right-click and use the bulk upload, okay, to that location. Hit connect, and then I might want to upload some files here, so I'll hit next. It could also be going to a target site. I'll drag and drop the files in, and then that's it. There's some rename rules, so there's built-in ones for special characters, and you can add more. There's some mapping rules if you want to do the metadata. The broken link job is done, but we'll get back to that one. So let's say I wanted to upload this folder, and include the folders. Let's just say, so I'll just hit upload. I'll say confirm. It's going to go to the root folder, and I'll let that run. Let's go to the broken link manager. And all of them will show you, almost all of them, they'll show you a summary, especially broken link manager, because if it does a find and replace and so forth. So in this one you can see the logs here. I can hit open report, and then from here you've got another detailed report, but I've got views. So let's say I want to see all broken links by document, so I can see group by list and document. And for example, that was in the site pages, the home, and a bunch of file not found, pointing to the old server. So link URL is the link URL is the actual path found. Absolute URL tested is if it was a relative path, and I'm sure there's a bunch here. So you can see here, like the relative path, the tool will predict or try to calculate where it's supposed to be going and then validate it. If I scroll to the right, there's also the href display value, like click here or whatever it might be to help you locate it. And you can see here, like script editor web part, content editor web part, where it's located, who last modified, or who's the author of the file. There's also an asterisk, if you noticed here, beside these. So anything with an asterisk means that there was a find and replace done, and where it got fixed. There's also one called validate find replace. So it'll filter to find only the ones with the find and replace. And you can see the link URL was the actual URL found, as I mentioned, and then it's got one that says new link URL. So I could right click on any of these, And see, that one is like, you know, some file, wherever that might be. But I could right-click it, open item, links in PDF, and what did it say? The display text is per some dummy text. So PERT. Right. So anyway, so that's how you could go and validate. But you can see there it was Contoso now. If I go to the actual home page, I should have probably left it open also. But now you can see the home page, the images are fixed. It's because it's pointing to Contoso. These images, the links, you know, including the tooltip, like this pop-up, will show you the new link. Let me show you the script editor. And you know, this is one of the components that's been out one of the longest, so it's been through many iterations and fixes and so forth to work with different things like track changes and the different versioning settings and so forth. So here, you know, it fixed the links. Let me stop editing. There's also inside the documents, I showed you a couple of them, so I'll just show you that one before we go. I think I showed that one, and then links in Word. So that one now is pointing to Contoso, if you remember. And then, yeah, so I should do what it's supposed to do and fix the links. The Contoso new server, okay. And that one's going to, okay, so and this is a PDF, so it'll fix those links. Let's go back home. And we're just about out of time. Sorry. So that is you know, that's the broken link manager. There are a few other things too, like content type reports. You know, so across lists. So these reports will grab all of the newest reports for all of my sites, and then display it merged. So here I can say, okay, show me all the content types for all the lists. So I can see, you know, document content types. All these lists are using this one, right, across my environments. So there's lots of reports you can do. Same with the permissions reports. I can say all unique item permissions. Let's see, I should have some data on this one. And let me get back to the presentation. But that's, you know, so this is for all the unique items. So I can say list title, and I want to know the item title, and then I'll get back to quickly finish this off. So you can see here, this was the folder, and before I should have something. Yep, access type. Let's see. Okay, so these are all folders, but basically you can, you know, move things around to see open item. Okay. So, okay, so that was just this attachments folder. Okay, but anyhow, so that's that. Let me get back to the presentation. How it's licensed, just quickly, is there's per seat, and we also have floating licenses. So per seat is like per machine or per named user. That's the simplest license model that we have, and that's the one that's priced on our website. For the enterprise licenses, we've got floating licenses, so that's a pool of licenses, kind of like use and release. So if you've got, let's say, 500 machines or users or that need to use it, you could, for example, install it on every machine, you know, whether it's 10 or 100, and then buy a pool of 1 floating license or 10 floating licenses, and then that would be shared amongst those 100 or 500 machines. It's just that each user will use it and then has to click on deactivate. There's also an auto deactivate setting to auto deactivate after 30 minutes or something. So they would use it, and then when they shut it down or close the program, it'll auto release that license to the pool of 10 so other people can use it. So that's our floating licenses. They're all on an annual subscription. The license or subscription includes technical support, which also has some training, 3 training sessions. And also it includes software assurance, so all updates. We're having a release in about a week of this beta that I just showed you. So you'll see that, and that's included in the license as well, all the new features. Okay. Okay, great. So thanks a lot, and really appreciate all your time.